You believe you know Patrick Swayze, the stunning dancer, romantic lead, and Ghost and Dirty Dancing star. But behind the spotlight, strong jawline, and irresistible attractiveness was a guy secretly fighting a horrible conflict. Despite never asking for it, he confronted it with unwavering bravery. The untold account of Patrick Swayze's dying hours. How he faced a harsh prognosis, refused to fade quietly, and clung on to love when everything else was lost. Let's examine his final chapter and the words that still haunt those he left behind. The world loved Patrick Swayze before the fall. Before pancreatic cancer headlines, Patrick Swayze was a legend emerging. He wasn't Hollywood royalty, but he had screen presence. Patrick was raised in Houston, Texas, by a choreographer mother and a cowboy father. A mix of grace and grit that shaped his character. He was hard to categorize in a label-obsessed town. He was the sensitive artist, trained in ballet and classical dance. Is he the tough American leader with a southern drawl and steely gaze? Being both made him magnetic. Dirty Dancing was his breakthrough in 1987. Nobody expected a low-budget dance picture to be a global sensation, but Swayze's Johnny Castle struck a chord. Women admired him, men wanted to be him, and teens? He wasn't only a lovely face with fluid motions. They attempted lifting each other in pools for decades. Ghost was his next dramatic role, requiring vulnerability, pain, and restraint. The Golden Globe-nominated film was one of the highest-grossing of its period. Swayze became more than a box office star. The performer was showing his seriousness and emotional depth. He became famous in the late 80s and early 90s for being tough and silent, yet with soul. He added dimension to every frame, whether playing adrenaline addicts in Point Break or wounded souls in City of Joy. But fame never softened him. He did his own stunts, trained hard, and suffered quietly. The Hollywood sparkle never replaced his dancing studio discipline or Texas toughness. This man controlled his fate. That made the next event so terrible. Because the fall wasn't a tabloid controversy or career failure. He faced something darker and more ruthless than anything Hollywood had ever offered. It started gently. The Hollywood shaking diagnosis begins. There was stomach pain at first. For a physically active mid-50s person, the pain was not concerning. Patrick suspected digestion issues, stress, or a torn muscle. But the ache persisted. It became worse, acute, persistent, chewing at him at night. Lisa advised him to get medical help. He did eventually. Urgent scans, blood tests, and biopsies followed routine ones. Suddenly, everything changed. Pancreatic adenocarcinoma, stage 4. The diagnosis is one of the deadliest in contemporary medicine. As the silent killer, pancreatic cancer rarely appears until it's infiltrated crucial organs. It reached Patrick's liver. Doctors were blunt. Tumor cancer wasn't curable. The customary sense of manageability was lacking. Not merely slim odds. They barely existed. At this point, median survival is 3 to 6 months. Few survive that long. Most people would have been devastated by such a diagnosis. Patrick wasn't typical. Instead of crying over the news, he stared his physicians in the eye and asked, "What are we going to do?" He was with his long-standing partner and best friend, Lisa Niemi. They battled together. They didn't want miracles. They wanted time. Days, weeks, anything. Stanford University Medical Center clinical trials brought optimism. Dr. George Fisher headed a research team investigating vatilinib, a medication that blocks tumors from forming new blood vessels, starving them. It was unapproved by FDA. Work wasn't assured. It was something. For Patrick, something was worth fighting for. In addition to time, he sought control over his life. That drive helped him last longer than intended. The last big fight, Patrick returns to set. January became February, then March. Vadalinib side effects were unpredictable when Patrick started his trial medication. Experiencing fatigue and nausea. His body was approaching unknown territory, yet he never missed a dose. His confidence was unwavering. When asked how he was, he didn't mention pain or exhaustion. The Miracle Man. Those were his words. Patrick had another Stanford scan on April 2, 2008, to assess his health. Despite expectations, the outcomes were good. The liver lesions didn't expand. Not all were metabolically active. Pancreatic cancer hadn't spread. In no way was he cured. But he was standing, battling, and holding the line for now. That moment gave him the chance to life again. He acted quickly. Patrick joined Star and the Beast, a Chicago-based crime drama, in September, just months after his illness. The film required punishing hours, sophisticated conversation, and physically intense scenes. Gamble is an understatement. Network executives worried. Insurance agents inquired. Patrick was there daily. Refused body duplicates. He learned every line. His commitment was total, not an image issue, not career-related. It was about defiance and showing he was still with it. 5 days a week, he filmed 14 to 16-hour shifts. The weekends after the cameras stopped rolling were spent in the hospital having chemotherapy. The majority of actors would have left. No one would have blamed him. However, Patrick believed that work was part of his recovery, and that mental attention was as crucial as IV drips. He was partly right. Because he wasn't a patient for months, he acted again. With every scene and line he shot, he fought the clock. Behind the curtain, agony, pride, and quiet desperation. Patrick Swayze was still the storm, crisp and dominating on screen. Behind the camera, the struggle continued. Every morning, he arose with military rigor, not because he felt strong, but because acting strong was his only alternative. He drank herbal tea to calm his sickness, applied makeup with shaky hands, and approached the stage like he wasn't dying. A performance within a performance. Cancer is a skilled eroder and doesn't simply assault the body. It erodes ego, identity, and self-worth. This sickness was the ultimate robber for Patrick, who had spent his entire building his image via exercise, discipline, and strength. Hair loss began. He moved slower and his eyes dulled. He felt the loss before the mirror did. Still, he refused to be treated like a patient. He rejected producers' suggestions to adjust the filming schedule to accommodate his chemo fatigue. He promised to notify you when he could no longer do it. That day never came because he never allowed it. Despite pride, suffering continued. Friends said he'd leave for minutes during scenes to vomit or compose himself. He always returned with a smile, always willing to go again. One moment revealed everything if one paid attentively. In between takes, Patrick's old friend saw him curled up in his trailer like a toddler. Sweat stained his clothes. His voice remained low despite his uncontrollable shaking. "Just grasp my hand," he urged. His request was not for rescue. He wasn't crying. He just wanted someone there, not a fan or a fixer. This Patrick was new to the world, the man who captivated millions. But that moment required holding. As the play ended, the cancer became more aggressive and relentless. It was incomplete. The mask falls, Patrick's decline. Patrick couldn't hide from the public, press, or cancer anymore, with the beast wrapped and out in the world. January 2009 changed his health and realities. Patrick was taken to Cedars-Sinai with pneumonia after the series ended. Anyone else with pneumonia may spend a week in bed. For someone with a weakened immune system, chemotherapy could be fatal. The sickness drew global attention. Patrick kept the worst of his conflict off the front page until now. However, paparazzi images of his thin physique, withered cheeks, and oxygen tube revealed the truth. The sickness won. Even as his lungs failed and his strength waned, Patrick insisted on discussing next moves. He didn't imagine doing nothing. His doctors suggested a risky combination of Abroxane and Gemzar, two strong chemotherapy medications not yet approved together. Risky. There were toxicity concerns, effectiveness and side effects. Patrick didn't hesitate. He approved instantaneously. Treatment was harsh. Losing his hair impacted him more than expected. Patrick always carried himself with pride and presence. His hair loss was more than cosmetic. The symbol shone that the struggle was far from over. He wore wigs in public for dignity. Despite his pain, he practiced smiling, but his weight decreased dramatically. His skin paled and shrank. Walking short distances was exhausting. Despite tiredness and sickness, he struggled to live. He rode horses and watched films. He discussed his future roles, but his body had transformed. It stopped cooperating. His closest friends noticed his slow speaking, minor uncertainty, and sometimes absent-minded stares. Cancer spread beyond his pancreatic and liver, was everywhere. Once his temple, his body was now a battlefield and losing territory. So Patrick decided, time to go home. The final retreat, home horses, and harsh truth. Patrick Swayze left Hollywood chaos and hospital precision in April 2009. He and Lisa returned to their California ranch, surrounded by hills and horses. The ranch was Patrick's refuge, where life seemed real again. He didn't say quit. He said it was returning to relevance. Long rides in the pastures had always been their refuge at the ranch. Evenings on the porch, watching the sunset. Hooves on dirt. It was their therapy. Patrick saw it as more than home. It was him. But everything changed. Chemo had slashed his athletic frame. His muscles melted into weakness. Getting aboard a horse was hard now. Sometimes he just watched them from the fence. Lisa accomplished everything. Handled the property, cooked his meals, took his prescriptions, and stayed up late when the pain flared up. She watched her teenage crush slowly evaporate. She never made him feel old. Patrick maintained normalcy as long as possible. He wore his wig around guests and grinned for photos. Despite feeling like falling, he sat up. As usual, he made dry, sarcastic quips, but his enthusiasm was fading. Not far behind were the journalists. Paparazzi camped near the property seeking the money shot. Unfiltered, undone Patrick Swayze. Finally, they succeeded. Several photographs emerged. Patrick slowly walks alongside Lisa, skeletal, sunken-eyed, and decades older than 57. Cruel headlines. Swayze is fading, unrecognizable. However, they couldn't portray the intimacy behind closed doors, late-night chats, minor wins like getting out of bed alone, or quiet moments when Lisa sat beside him, hand in hand, saying nothing. Words were unnecessary now. Patrick was exhausted and knew what was coming. The storm he'd resisted for 20 months was coming. Last hours of his departure. Patrick's condition worsened by late August. The symptoms were extended fevers, uncontrollable tremors, and severe weariness. He collapsed with a high fever and hazardous heart rate. Blood tests showed the chilling truth. Hypercalcemia, hyponatremia, GI hemorrhage, and nearly no white blood cells. His body was weakening and shutting down. Lisa took him to Cedars-Sinai again, but there were no fresh difficulties or hope. Physicians delivered the unwelcome news on September 9th. Nothing else can be done. Patrick was last home that night. In 2011, Lisa declared, "I can't keep this secret anymore," revealing the events leading up to his death. Lisa recounts Patrick's dying days. The man who had danced on stages and movie sets now spent much of his time in bed, scarcely able to sit up. The house was quiet, and the air was thick. The tumors invaded his bones, nerves, and organs. It hurt endlessly. Not optional anymore. Morphine. It was vital to keep him awake. Lisa became his full nurse. She gave Dilaudid carefully, changing doses to relieve pain without knocking him unconscious. Patrick resisted anesthesia till the end, stubbornly. He wanted to be there, even if it meant hell. Lisa's brother Eric and his wife Mary visited on September 11th. Energy was low in the gloomy house. Patrick dipped in and out. Only briefly did lucidity return. Turning to Lisa, he whispered, "I adore you." Lisa leant in. "I adore you too." They didn't know it, but those were their last words. Pure and honest, neither theatrical or poetic. Patrick fell into a coma for 2 days. Shallow breathing. His already weak body became stiller with each hour. Then, 10 a.m. On September 14th, Lisa sat beside him and observed the shift. Long final inhale, deep breath. Silence. Donnie Swayze ran in, hoping for anything, but it was finished. Patrick Swayze did not die alone or without love. With courage, dignity, and a hand, he left as he had lived.